to draw women from history who've really changed things for women in bicycling. And so I Googled women suffragette bicycling, and the names of some women that I knew came up, and I will be drawing them. But the name of a woman came up that I'd never heard of before, that somehow I'd missed her story. And so in closing today, I'd like to share her story with you if you don't know it. Her name was Kittie Knox, and she was a beautiful young seamstress from Boston who loved to ride her bike. In fact, she loved to ride her bike so much that she would go on 100-plus mile rallies and races, and she would place high, even when she was bicycling against men. And in 1893, she decided to join the League of American Wheelmen. And in 1895, she joined with her friends to travel to New Jersey for their annual meeting. But in 1894, the League had passed a whites-only law. And so when she went to hand in her card, they said, "I'm sorry, you can't come in," because Kittie had a black father and a white mother. It had never been an issue in Boston, where she was from. And so her friends were really upset, and they wanted to do something about it. And fortunately, Kittie did not go quietly into the night. No, she began riding her bike around in the front of where the meeting was taking place. And the media, yeah, you see where I'm going, the media said, "Who is this beautiful young woman with this bespoke bicycle outfit? What's she doing?" And the story went around the country like wildfire. Well, the friends from Boston got together with League members who were like, "Well, you know, she did join before the color line, so technically we got to let her in." And they did let her in. But sadly, she died a few years later in 1900 at just 26 of kidney disease. And because her family situation was such that they couldn't afford a grave marker for her. And her story would have died there, except that a writer from Boston, Lawrence Finnison, was writing about the history of bike advocacy in Boston and kept coming across her name and her picture, and he was fascinated. So he decided that he would track down family members, and he did. And together, they worked to raise the money to finally mark her grave. And in 2013, her story was shared again in the Boston Globe. So I decided she was absolutely who I wanted to draw for Pedal Love. Kittie's story counts. My story counts. Your story counts. Now, it's up to you to decide how you'll use it. Thank you.